Hello and welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. Our guest today is Indira Somani. You can find her on Twitter at iSomani. She's a filmmaker, a journalism school professor, and a former TV news producer. We'll also be talking about a documentary she's making about her mom, who has been struggling with depression for the last 20 years. My name is Neil Parekh. I am the executive producer and guest host of the show. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. Now we're live on my Instagram. Sorry about that. Please like, please comment, please share, please tag your friends. Let folks know that we're going to have a great show today. In addition to talking about Indira's documentary that she's working on, we'll of course talk about her work as a professor of journalism, and we'll cover the New York Times, the Sunday edition. We do this every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Often, with guests, sometimes from the New York Times, sometimes outside the Times. But we always have a great conversation. Let's go ahead and see who is watching us right now, who's checked in at least. And then we'll bring Sri on in just a moment. We have our friend Jimmy Carter watching from North Carolina. Jimmy, thank you for joining us. Of course, Jonathan is watching from the East Village. Jonathan, is always great to have you there. Our friend Stephen Kaplan is watching from Ramsey, New Jersey, saying hello to the New York Times Read Along family. Hope everyone is well. I do this every week. I wave like a silly little boy at my mom, but she watches every week, and I want to thank you for doing that, Mom. And in particular, I know that this episode will resonate. And it made me think about all of the aunties in my family and in the community. So I'm glad that you were able to watch this morning from Hastings on Hudson. Our friend Shashi is watching from Potomac, Maryland. Shashi, I never realized that you were in Potomac, not far from where I live in Silver Spring. Thank you so much for helping to support the show and share it on Twitter. Diana is also up early. Our guest is up early as well, but Diana is watching from the San Francisco Bay Area. So thank you. It's part of our West Coast crew. Dr. Chandrasekhar, shaken, not stirred on Friday, talking about the earthquake. We'll want to hear about that in just a moment. Looking forward to seeing a bit of the eclipse tomorrow. We will also talk to folks about that. We have a number of other people who have checked in, but let's bring on our the namesake of the show. I'm going to guest host today, but the namesake, Sri Srinivasan. Sri, thank you so much for checking in for this morning.
Thank you so much, Neil. So great to see all the folks joining us. Greetings from Midtown East. I am looking forward to seeing some of the eclipse tomorrow. We barely felt the earthquake here in where we live, but we did feel it when we went to see we felt the aftershocks when we went to see Monkey Man, Dave Patel's new movie. Much too violent for me, but some folks here may really enjoyed it. But I do encourage everyone to check it out. Welcome to the New York Times Read Along. We talk about the New York Times, we talk about our guests, and we try to understand what's happening in the world. We don't just read the New York Times, we read other papers as well, and we're always looking for guest ideas. So if you'd like to be a guest or suggest a guest on the show, please let us know. We do the Sundays, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Our guest today, Indira Somani, woken up to be with us in time for 5:30 a.m. because she's in the West Coast. We want to thank you all for being here. The show is brought to you by Digimentors, the company that I run with Neil and lots of great folks. We do lots of things, shows like this. We do conferences, hybrid events, and we do digital marketing, PR. We do lots of training around AI, and we do help people hire social media folks, chief digital officers, things like that. So do check out our work at digimentors.group. And the show is brought to you by our friends at Muckrack. This is, as you know, one of the best ways to get in touch with journalists and for journalists to get verified accounts, much better than what they're doing over at Twitter and X. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please join us. This is our 8th year doing this. Email me or Neil, sri@digimentors.group or neil@digimentors.group. Neil has a terrific show that he does twice a month that we want to plug right here. And that show is so important. We will touch upon some of the same topics because we are sharing guests this week. This is that cross-platform synergy that we talk about, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. And Indira is going to be a guest on that show as well, talking about the South Asian community, elders, her great documentary that you're going to hear about in just a moment. So that's Thursday, April 11th, and it'll be on all these social media channels, and you can also watch the recording. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to do a quick tour of the paper. There's so much to cover, but I'm not here for the whole show. I'm only here for about 15, 20 minutes, and I wanted to maximize my time with Indira. So, of course, there's the front page of the New York Times. Here is a very important story about what happened in the 2016 election. Remember the catch and kill policy of the National Enquirer, which helped get President Trump elected by killing the worst stories about him. Imagine there were stories we hadn't heard, and because it was also awful in 2016, but there were stories we didn't get a chance to hear. The book cover is about 50 years of Stephen King. Wow. And last thing I'll show you for now, a special section, the 100 best restaurants in New York City. And of course, I went through very quickly looking to see which restaurants I know. There are some places that I've heard of, some I have not, but I want to tell you that the South Indian restaurant Sema is here on this list at number 7. It was last year at it was jumped 5 places from last year. The number 7 best restaurant in New York City. There are other Indian restaurants in this as well, and big time expensive restaurants, inexpensive restaurants are also in this list by Pete Wells. So you'll get a chance to see all of that with Neil. So let's get right to talking to Indira Somani, my dear friend who has been part of my circles for so many years. She was vice president of Saja and on the Saja board with me for many years. And she's a filmmaker, a former television news producer, journalism professor. She's on IG, indira.somani1, and on Twitter @isomani. And at 5:38 a.m. in California, hi.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, Sri. It's nice to see you. Yes, we're talking about a nearly 30-year friendship. I think the first time you reached out to me was in 1995, and I think I was a news producer in Norfolk, Virginia then. So thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
And the amazing journey that you've had being part of us together at Saja. Saja is now 30 years old, the South Asian Journalists Association. I'm honored to be back on the board and serving as president this year. And we're going to rope you in, of course, Indira, for various things. But I want to tell folks that when I moved apartments near the UN, Indira sent us a plant. And that plant is thriving and looks absolutely beautiful on this very nice day. We're going to be seeing the eclipse out of that window, Indira. And love what you did for us. Just one of many, many things. Very appreciative of your friendship, and just seeing, so proud of all you've been able to do. I've got to ask, what are you normally doing at 5:30 in the morning on a Sunday?
I'm sleeping. Yes, I'm sleeping. I am known to sleep in on the weekends when I can. So. But, you know, this is good, too, because I've got to get my taxes done. So I'm really glad I got up, and now I've got the whole day to get what needs to get done. So
yeah, I will just say that getting up this early for us, we're so grateful that you would do this. And we appreciate that there is so much that goes on in a person's life. To carve out time like this is a gift to us and to our audience. And folks, please ask your questions about filmmaking, ask about journalism, ask about her career. We're going to talk about her very special documentary about her mother. And you're going to hear lots of great stories from me and from Neil's interview with Indira. Please tag a friend. We've asked Indira to share this on her Facebook as well as on her other channels. So take a moment, everybody. reach out, tag a friend, reshare on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can find my Instagram at SriNet, and would love to connect with you there. And we're on the digimentors.group website. We have more than 3 years of archives at digimentors.group. So everyone, please check that out. Look for the New York Times Read Along section. So Indira, you saw me looking through a bunch of newspapers here. Tell me about your relationship with newspapers and the news these days, since you're not an everyday journalist and television producer anymore.
Actually, that's a great question. So I am teaching a class at Chapman University called Investigative Journalism, and every class starts with a news quiz. And so when I started teaching in 2003, and I had my news quizzes because that's the way I was taught at Medill, to make sure we're on top of the news. So every class would start with a news quiz. Students would get their answers from various news sources. So I make sure that the news questions come from the New York Times and from NBC Nightly News. I tell them the two sources are the New York Times front page, as well as NBC Nightly News evening newscast. And so that is, and to be honest with you, honestly, I don't feel like my day is complete until I've watched the news. And, you know, like you, I started my journalism formal training in the early 90s. And I really, I think it's just, you know, part of my genetics.
I totally understand that. I'm trying to think of, you know, these students trying to read the newspaper and try to understand. We do the show so that we can fight misinformation, disinformation. This is my regular plug to everyone. Subscribe to a newspaper wherever you are in the world. Please subscribe. Newspapers keep our world going and really help us. So please do subscribe to any newspaper, especially a local newspaper. There's so much business turbulence, as you know, Indira, and you lived through some of that in your journalism career. So let's tell people about the documentary you're making and your journey with that.
Thank you so much, Sri. Just to clarify a couple of things. Yes, the film touches on depression, but it's really sort of centered around the relationship with my mom. So there are probably people on this platform, including you and Neil, who have lost a parent. And what oftentimes goes uncovered is how the surviving spouse is handling that loss. And for my mom, it has been a difficult journey. She, the normal grieving process is somewhere between 2 to 4 years. But I think what happened with her is, I know, she was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance in her brain because she fell into severe depression after my dad died in 2002, which, by the way, I just want to say, when he passed, you gave me a beautiful plant. And I, unfortunately, it hasn't survived the last 20 plus years, but it was something that really touched me at the time. And so she, in the early days after dad passed, she couldn't get out of bed. It was months. She was still working. She's a retired award-winning social worker, so I take a lot of pride in my mom. And, her journey is unique in itself because she came by herself to the United States in 1964 on a fellowship to pursue her master's in social work. And she actually met my dad in the cafeteria at the University of Pittsburgh. And they married in Pittsburgh in 1966. But this is a fiercely independent woman. She paid for her own plane ticket to come to the US because from working in a child guidance center in Calcutta, India. And so to see her struggle was a challenge. But let's see here. So one of the things that I've always wanted to do was make this film about her depression. And I talked to her about it, and she really wants to be open about this. So this was eye-opening to me, because obviously I'm in a position of power here, but I want to be treating her with as much dignity as possible. And I think, being a former social worker, she really wants the message to get out that South Asians also suffer from mental illness. And she wants people to know that it's not a taboo subject. So we actually started filming in January of 2021 during the pandemic. A cinematographer was embedded with us. I was in Springfield, working remotely from Springfield. And, you know, what you're looking at here is a picture of my mom who refuses to get out of bed. And you see, you know, my arms there. And this is actual footage in the film. I just took a still shot of it. And we're just fighting because she refuses to get out of bed. And, you know, one of the things the doctors say is, you've got to get out of bed, and you've got to start your day, and you've got to have breakfast, and you've got to take your medication. Medication being her antidepressant medication. And so, you know, she's holding onto that blanket for dear life, and I'm trying to pull it off from her. And, you know, I'm a daughter and I'm a caregiver, and now I'm also the director of the film. So I have to take, you know, while I'm a character in the film, I also have to like take off my character hat and turn to the cinematographer and say, okay, come on, get in here, get in here. By the way, I really want to give a shout out to Raquel Hagman, my cinematographer. So my mom, she's actually, so at the time she was using a CPAP machine because she struggles with sleep apnea. Her sleep has improved tremendously because she's lost a lot of weight. She's lost about 40 pounds actually in the last year. And, but at the time she was using a CPAP machine. It's not an easy thing to put on if you're not used to it. And of course you see here a scene where I'm helping her put it on. And then, you know, I kind of tuck her into bed, and she has arthritis on her legs. So you see this scene where I'm rubbing arthritis medication on her legs, on her knees, and so forth before she goes to bed. We could go to the next picture if you want. So another thing that that a lot of elderly people struggle to get done is get their nails cut. And so I find myself, even today, I'm still helping my mom cut her nails. I'm not sure how much my sister likes to do it, but I am always cutting her nails, cutting her fingernails, and just making sure that they're trimmed and so forth. You know, the thing about antidepressant medication is, if you're on it, you can really take care of yourself. So the other concept that is unique about this film is, I grew up in Springfield, Illinois. I was born in Pittsburgh, but then when I was very young, you know, preschool age, we moved to Springfield. And Springfield is the home of Lincoln, land of Lincoln. So what you see here is a picture of my mom and I looking at Lincoln's tomb. And there's other footage in the film of Mom and I at Lincoln's cabin. And the reason we shot these
log cabin, yes. The
log cabin, yes, this log cabin. It's really crazy, I know. But the reason we shot these is because, yes, my dad was a professor of medicine, but he had this hobby of shooting on 8mm film. So throughout the film, we are incorporating archival footage, and we shot these iconic scenes because we have archival footage of me and my mom as when I was a child at these same places. So yeah, here's just some still images of the archival footage, but and honestly, there's an image, that image there of me in the blue coat is Mom and I on the Atlantic City boardwalk. And we actually have footage from 2021. Yes, we're in the pandemic, but my sister was determined for us to have a family vacation. So my mom is doing that same journey with her granddaughter on the land in which we filmed. So the other thing I'm trying, there's a lot of layers with the film, and that is, you know, we're Indian. And we love eating rotis, or at least I love eating rotis. We have this whole scene where my mom did not grow up eating rotis because she's Bengali from Calcutta, but it wasn't until there was a rice shortage that she learned to start eating rotis. And my dad, being Mawardi, he loved eating rotis. So when they got married, she was determined to learn how to make rotis. And then, of course, she's trying to teach me how to make rotis. So we have this whole scene going on there. Of course, one of the layers is the Indian culture that surrounds this film.
So I wanted to just interrupt and say there's so many more great pictures that we're going to see. Neil's going to go through them with you. I wanted to unpack a little bit of it. Thank you for talking about what happens when a parent passes. Neil has famously talked on the show, but the reason why he's working on the show and joined me as a volunteer, now of course he works with me, but he joined as a volunteer because his dad loved the New York Times and asked to have the New York Times Sunday edition in the casket when he was cremated. And I still get goosebumps as I talk about that. And so it's been about a dozen years since we lost Neil's father, who I knew better than I knew Neil, and who was a mentor and advisor to Saja in the early days. And we loved having him as part of Saja. I lost my mom at she was just 73 last year, and I got a little picture. There we go, a little photo of her. And she used to watch, and I'm just struck by, I took for granted when my mom would watch the show. And that's why I love it when Neil gets to say hi to his mom, because he still gets to say that, and I don't on the show anymore. I came home, Indira, and I told my next door neighbor, who happens to be Pakistani, that I lost my mom at 73. He said he lost his mom 10 days earlier, and she was only 53. So you can imagine, as you said, dealing with the passing of a loved one is very complicated and very layered. And the stories you're telling in this are going to be very important. In the South Asian community, we don't talk about mental health. And that's why I'm so grateful to Neil for doing his show on, twice a month. And you're going to be a guest this coming week, April 11th. Everyone, please check in on all of these social media channels. And how difficult was it? I know your mom agreed to do this, but to have the rest of your family agree to go along with this, because it isn't always easy, even if the principal folks are interested in talking, their family members are sometimes not.
So as you know, the film focuses on me and my mom, but yes, we have some specific scenes with my sister because she's equally a caregiver for my mom, and she actually handles all the financials. She's a financial whiz, and she has been incredibly supportive of the film and incredibly supportive of me and my career. And so everybody, we have an iconic scene where my mom's 83 now, and she's actually going to be 84 in 10 days. But we have a scene when we celebrate her 81st birthday together. And so my sister's kids, the grandkids, are all in the scene together with her, with us singing happy birthday and, blowing the candles out. And my brother-in-law is in there as well. And, these are difficult conversations to have. And I think the important thing is that everybody is on board to try and spread the message. And just so you know, my mom is an avid reader of newspapers. I hate to say this, I think she's a little bit more of a Wall Street Journal reader. My dad was more of a Wall Street Journal reader as well, but that was their go-to newspaper for sure.
I want to read some of the comments that have come in. Mukul says, such an important film, Indira. Thank you for sharing your mother's journey. Ken is watching from Iowa. He says the Iowa contingent is reporting for duty. Susanna is watching from Toronto on LinkedIn. Pradnya Haldipur is watching from Silver Spring, Maryland, your old stomping grounds in around the DC Capitol. Folks, I just want to say that we're going to have a Saja DC mixer on Wednesday evening, so watch for information on that. Marion Berkeley is watching from Hell's Kitchen in New York City. Jonathan is saying, I'm fascinated by the mediaization of the last earthquake. Hardly the first in New York and not even the strongest. why did it get so much coverage? I'm sure all you West Coasters in there were wondering the same thing, because you folks can experience more often. But this was really the surprise factor. It was not that something dangerous happened. It was just the surprise factor. And let's see who else is watching. Rahadjan is watching from Bayshore, Long Island, and Naomi's watching from the Upper West Side. We have a LinkedIn user saying Sema rocks, and Rupa says hello to you.
Oh, yes.
And Tula is watching, and great filmmaker and film professor. Debbie's watching from DC. Please tag your friends, folks, so they can join us. Paula's watching from Tallahassee. Look what Pradnya is doing. She's tagging her friends so that they can watch and know about the show. Diane is watching from sunny Margate, New Jersey, excited to learn about the film. And Dr. Sujana is tagging Jesse Golden, saying, wow, this is so powerful. So everyone, please share this. Susanna says, beautiful conversation. I'll watch the rest on recording. Everybody, you can do that on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and on digimentors.group. I'm so sorry that I have to step away. Neil's going to take over, but I want to mention one thing. You mentioned your mom's using a CPAP machine. My mom used one as well. I resisted using one. I have sleep apnea, and I refused to use one because I felt like I was choking when I was using it. But just in the last month, I've started using a CPAP machine. It's not the full face. It's the more no nostril-based one, and it has changed my life in a variety of ways, especially since it helps Rupa sleep through the night more than me sleeping through the night. It helps Rupa sleep through the night. It has changed our dynamic, as you can imagine. I just want to point out before I leave a couple of great shows that we're going to have in the months ahead. We have a book here from Manisha Sinha. It's called Professor Sinha. The book is called The Rise and Fall of the Second American Republic. It's about Reconstruction, 1860 to 1920, but it's also about what's happening today. We're going to talk to her. She's an expert and a professor on Reconstruction, slavery, and all the horrible things that she has had to study. Helps us understand the world today. And we'll also have Amitava Kumar on, a professor at Vassar College. His book, My Beloved Life, not only has a great picture in the back, but a glowing review from Salman Rushdie. And many of you saw that in the New Yorker this past week. And there's so much to talk about with the film, Indira's film. There's also lots of things in the news that Neil's going to take over here, and handing it over to you. Indira, thank you. Good luck to you. Good luck to your family, and always cheering for you. Thank you very much.
Sri, I just want to say thank you as well. And I also want to say that my dad was a huge fan of Rupa's. So I really need to give a shout out to that. I mean, when he first met her at the Saja convention in 2002, he was like, you know what? She is amazing. She is amazing. So please pass that message on to her. It sounds like she's listening. So maybe she heard it herself. And yes, I'm looking forward to talking about the so-called earthquake. Because I well, my aunt said she's in northern New Jersey. She hardly felt it, but anyway,
Okay.
we'll talk about that. All right, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sri. And so-called earthquake, it definitely, I didn't feel it in the Washington D.C. area, but from what I understand, the Empire State Building is still standing, so it's still okay. Rupa says thank you for those kind words. I do want to bring in a couple other comments in there before we go back to talking about the film, because it really touched a nerve, I think. Mukul had said, I think Sri mentioned this, but Mukul said, such an important film. Thank you for sharing your mother's journey. And Diana Rahini, who you may know as well, talking about mental health within the South Asian community is such a critical conversation. Thank you for sharing your journey. Deborah Bernick, an important message as well. Show your film to NAMI to help other families. And absolutely, there are a number of groups. Once the film comes out, it's still in post-production. So we're still waiting for the final, but certainly we'll want to share it again with folks. My mom, who is also a social worker, a retired social worker, says that you did pioneering work, that in the South Asian community, people hide about mental illnesses. They don't talk about it. And sometimes they're treated with spirits. So that's certainly a challenge.
Well, the thing is, I think my mom was able to really lean on me for support in the early years. She actually has. I'm not. Springfield has a small South Asian community compared, of course, to the um, the major metropolitan areas like New York and Chicago. It's probably considered small. You've got to understand, in 1974, when we moved there were 10 Indian families.
Sure.
Now there are hundreds, and there's a temple, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think my mother was 62 when my dad passed, and she's considered perhaps one of the elders in the community now.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if she really felt she could be open with the community there. But she had one friend who I really want to give a shout out to, and that is her name is Mrs. Rumba Chowdhury. And so we call her Rumba Mashi. And her own mother suffered from depression in India. So Rumba Mashi is about 15 years younger than my mom.
Mm.
So she was, in her 40s, late 40s, when my dad passed. But she understood what my mom was going through. So she was really, sort of checking on my mom through the process. Keep in mind, I actually, there's a picture of us at the temple, because this is a state, the thing about antidepressants is if you take them regularly, you can live a very fulfilled life. So this is a scene where, she's doing well. She wants to get out of bed. We go to temple. We're getting darshan. We're definitely practicing our faith. And she, one of the things we also uncovered is that with depression, you can go through down cycles every 3 to 4 years. You can be on antidepressants, lead a very sort of productive life, but then with the chemicals in the brain, you can sort of hit what's called a down cycle, and go into some deep depression for 3 to 4 months. And so she really, I think at the time Dad passed, I was freelancing, so in New York, so I was able to come home right away. And I actually think I spent the first 3 months with my mom. And then I found myself flying back and forth between Springfield and New York to sort of to be staying with her for periods of time, checking in on her. And then I launched my journalism professor career in the fall of 2003. And she slowly was getting her strength back to return to work. I mean, when Dad first died, she was on a leave of absence from work. This is a scene of when she's doing well. She really loves her garden. And let me just tell you, this is a scene when we are trying to get the dead vines and dead leaves out of this vine that surrounds the outside of the garage. And, if you cut a vine that is healthy, trust me, she'll bite your head off. So this is, it's actually kind of a funny scene, because I'm really cracking up because she gets mad at me because I'm cutting the wrong dead vine. But maybe we move on to the next slide and see what's next.
Yeah, sure. And before we do that, I just want to acknowledge some of the folks watching on Instagram. A number of people have chimed in, and looking over on my side here, Walter Grayson in particular said such an important conversation. And Diane Stefani is saying good morning from sunny Margate, New Jersey. Galal Zaki, Hala Mobdi is watching from Chicago. Thank you, Hala. And then also on Street Channel, a number of people have tuned in. So again, we're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. And make sure to press play if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter. Make sure you press play on the video to leave a comment so we can show it on screen. But here are a few more scenes, and gets into the medical side in terms of the attending to some of the doctor's appointments that you go to with your mom.
Yeah, no, that's the other thing that I've learned about documentary filmmaking. You know, a lot of it has to do with access. And I reached out to a friend of mine who's actually, her name is Professor Ria Tajiri at Temple University, because she shot she shot inside a doctor's office, and I was asking her how she did that, and she was definitely having some challenges getting access, but luckily my mom's doctor was able to give her access. This is Dr. Priyanka Bandari, who's part of the SIU Family Clinic. And here mom is getting her blood pressure, because the thing about antidepressant medication is it will raise your blood pressure. So while her psychiatrist was not able to be a part of the documentary, her doctor, who took care of her for high blood pressure as well as her cholesterol, definitely treated her. And we were able to do this whole scene where Dr. Bandari talks to my mom and me about how she should no longer be living by herself. She needs to live near me or near my sister, and be engaging with other individuals, so that she doesn't, fall into some sort of lonely pattern and continue to struggle with her depression.
Absolutely. And this is more from that scene with the doctor.
Mm.
This is, kind of I think of this as the hero image, the cover image you have
Oh,
for
yeah.
the film, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is actually a Mother's Day picture with my mom in, I believe it was 2012. So it's been a few years, but it is a Mother's Day picture. And it was actually taken in northern New Jersey. My aunt lives, and I have to give a shout out to my aunt, my wonderful aunt, who lives in Paramus, New Jersey. And we were celebrating Mother's Day with her. And so that, I just, people say I look like my mom, and I'm very grateful for that.
Sure.
Yeah, she was doing really well that day. I mean, like I said, mental illness, it's an art in terms of how you treat the chemical imbalance in the brain and the struggle that people go through. It's not an exact science. I have a whole spreadsheet on the medications that have worked for my mom and the medications that have not worked for my mom. Sometimes certain medications can have a real counter effect. I know there's one medication she said she can't take that because it made her feel suicidal. And so, of course, we made sure all the doctors know that,
Wow.
So it's a real challenge to figure out what's working, what isn't working. And then she has a tendency to feel anxious. And when she's feeling anxious, it can really affect her sleep. But she's lost quite a bit of weight in the last year. She was in a bad car accident last year, actually, and now she's using a walker. And so that's, I think, is what contributed to, not the walker part, but the accident is what has contributed to her weight loss. And losing the weight has helped her sleep better through the night. And as I'm sure getting a good night's sleep, it really recharges the brain. So that has been significant for her. Go ahead.
Tell us a little bit about the production itself in terms of where you are in terms of the mechanics. You're still in post-production, right? Are you
Right.
still getting footage? Are you completely in the editing booth?
So far we've got about 100 hours of footage, and that includes at least the 5 hours of archival footage that I've had digitized into 4K. And we have hired an editor, and we have a couple editors on this project. We just finished filming my mom has sold her house, actually. So the house that you saw, She just sold it. We just closed this past Wednesday, April 3rd, because my mom, after many years, has made the very difficult decision to move closer to my sister in Denver. So this was a decision. I give my sister full credit for this. She started planting the seed about 8 years ago. Because the thing is, the thing about mental illness is caregivers, home health aides, cannot force an individual to take medication. Only a family member can force them. And I'm not saying, like hold their arms down or something like that, but you really have to sit with them and explain to them, look, you've got to take these meds, and so forth. So if she's falling into deep depression, she's got to be able to take her medication. And if she's not taking her medication, one of us would have to like get on a plane and, get to Springfield to make sure she's taking her meds and so forth, and get her out of this cycle before she falls into deep depression. And, but the car accident is what really instigated the move, because now with the walker, it's very hard for her to cook. She can't drive anymore. She totaled her car, and her license in the state of Illinois has been suspended. And, she was still driving, last year. And so now it's hard for her to even make a cup of tea. And so I think she realized that she really wanted to live closer to one of us. And now she's in a place, it's a very high-end independent living facility. And, I really struggled with this decision myself, because Springfield is home to me, and being with mom is what is home to me. And that isn't the house that I grew up in. That's actually the third house she's lived in Springfield. But, wherever she is, that's home to me. But she's in a place now, and, and this is one of the things I want to talk about in the impact campaign when the film is done, is that, independent living is not affordable in this country. In fact, it's ridiculously overpriced. But she's actually in a financial position where she can afford it. And she's in a place where she's made friends very quickly. She has a bridge club she goes to. She's a fiercely competitive card player. So she's, she has friends to have dinner with. They have a very high-end chef, so she's getting really good meals. And the truth is, yes, perhaps an Indian senior care place would have been ideal, but there's only one the ones that I know of are in Florida and Northern California. And the truth is, they may not have been the right fit for her. She's someone who's been here. It'll be 60 years, August 16th, when she entered this country. And, she's been here a long time. She's incredibly well-read. She's well-educated. She worked for 40 years. So and she is Bengali, and it's something that I see her face light up when she's talking to other Bengalis. So, if she's in a place where there's a lot of
community is important.
Yeah.
As far as focusing back on the documentary itself. So are you going to include the move to Denver in the closing?
Oh, yeah. So
I want to figure out where we are in terms of the process of getting the documentary finished. How much work you still have to do before we can see it, hopefully, depending on how it's distributed, et cetera. How will we get to a finished product?
Sure. Sorry, I got off track there. I'm sorry. What I was trying to say earlier was that we just shot moving out of the house. We just filmed all that, and we filmed the empty house, and we filmed this incredible sari scene where we found a lot of the old saris that my mom was wearing in the archival footage and so forth. Now, one of the things we still need to film is mom in the independent living facility playing bridge with her friends, because we'd like to end the film on hope, And so I would say, now the thing about documentary editing is that the film really comes together in the edit. And so we're looking at releasing this film at least a year from now, because the editing could very well take 7 to 8 months, if not a year.
Sure.
I really like to see this film on PBS because I think I think that's the ideal audience,
Sure.
honestly, for this film.
But putting a film like this is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, in terms of the work that you're putting in. And you mentioned earlier that you're both, one of the caregivers along with your sister, but also trying to direct at the same time. But it's also a financial challenge as well, right? It's not cheap for the
Yes,
editing time,
yes.
etc.
Well, as you know, Neil, one of the things that brought us together is my Kickstarter campaign that ran in January, and I'm so grateful. There's people on this platform today who donated. Mukul, I want to give a shout out to you. Thank you so much for your generous contribution. Neil as well, Sri as well. I also am just trying to raise money through grants. I'm constantly applying to grants to get more money, and editors are expensive. Documentary are having their moment in the film space, and so documentary editors can really write their ticket because they are in demand, and especially documentary editors who can really um, go through archival footage and understand sort of parallel construction between the archival footage and the present day footage. So yes, I am trying to raise money, and I think there's a link that we're going to put on the
Right?
screen soon
That's
if
that's what I
anybody
was
wants to
trying to lead to, is to,
do
to really
it.
make the case for why you need. It's not something and I know from actually from years ago, back when I was in high school even, our youth group leader is a documentary filmmaker, John Young. He actually did a documentary about maxing out his credit cards to be able to put out a film, and we've seen numerous articles about how challenging this is. So I want to encourage folks. You can see the link in the ticker, depending on where you're watching. I'm also going to share it in Facebook and LinkedIn. Please take a moment if you can to help Indira close this out and raise the funds she needs. It'll still take a year to get developed. I mean, that's I think an important point. How much time it'll take to get to the finish line. But any support that you could offer would be much appreciated. You can see the link on the screen,
Yes,
momandme.alirafundraising.com.
yes,
Um,
absolutely. My fiscal sponsor is From the Heart Productions, and so this link is on their webpage. And yeah, let me see if I can find some more links. But this link is for, of course, a credit card donation. But we can
sure.
also, what I'll do is let me put From the Heart Productions email address. I'm sorry, mailing address in case people want to send a check because that would be also greatly appreciated.
So we're
That is, you
showing the
know,
website on the screen now if folks go to it. If there's more information about the documentary. uh, Mom and Me is the working title. The eventual title, it might be more I Love You More Than My Life, in terms of the evolution in there. Don't worry about the address. You can send it to
okay,
me and I can push it out to people later.
okay,
Don't
okay, sure.
That's fine. That's fine. I want to make sure that we get Dr. Tachi's comment. Such an important topic. So many cultures of color brush mental health under the rug, and she can't wait to watch the documentary. Dr. Tachi is watching. I believe it's Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and it's right. This is where she usually watches from. So thank you, Dr. Tachi,
Thank
for
you.
joining us. We want to make sure we also say hi to our friend Apollo, who is watching from Philadelphia. Glad to be here. Peter Crosby is watching from Tucson, Arizona, also early his time. So thank you, everyone. And Peter is saying that he's been editing a documentary about his cross cultural journey across the heartland of America for about a year. So he can relate to that process and what
Yes.
it takes to
Sounds
put it
like it.
out.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. It takes a long time. You're finding the story in the edit.
I want to switch gears for a moment now, because part of the um, you know part of the fascination of having you on the show, in addition to talking about your mom's story and really your story in terms of your relationship with her. I want to make sure folks know we'll get more about that on Thursday when Indira joins us for Shining Light on Shadows, as Sri mentioned earlier, a candid conversation about mental health. We'll talk about the South Asian community, elders, caregiving, and more. But I want to give you a taste of some of what we're going to be talking about. Um, my colleague Don Helmrich wrote a blog post. We'll put it up. We'll put it up on our website later today. As folks may know, because we've talked about it, Dawn is a survivor of a violent episode of violent trauma. She was raped when she was about 20, but she writes about a daughter's rape, a mother's cancer. My silent hell as a caregiver was always there. The anxiety, deep fear, and depression were once again nearly unbearable. I felt selfish for wanting her to not leave me. Dawn lost her mother a few years ago, and so she talks about that and kind of that relationship. I'll talk about the importance of representation in all of this. And I really did when I saw Indira's post. I immediately thought of the aunties in my community. I thought of several who had lost their husbands years ago. How many people in my circle were suffering from depression? And that's really what it brought up for me, Indira, when we first connected over that Kickstarter campaign. And then the blog post you wrote that we'll be publishing, telling my mom's story and caring for her. My mom could not immediately lean on the South Asian community, as you mentioned earlier, when she was diagnosed with depression, and instead turned to me. So encourage folks to join us on Thursday, where we'll go into a little bit more detail about these issues, and I'll drop the link in Facebook and LinkedIn. Um, and I'll try and talk and type at the same time. Sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. But
yeah, no, I really appreciate what you posted there, because I think I share Dawn's feelings. I really feel really feel selfish about not wanting my mom to leave me either. I mean, obviously she's getting up there in the years, but I know that I will go through. I will be devastated when she sort of transitions into the afterlife, and
sure.
I can appreciate, and I'm looking forward to talking with Dawn on Thursday.
It'll be a very interesting conversation. Mary Curtis says she seconds Dr. Tachi's comment. Such an important conversation. Mary is joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina. What I wanted to do before we talk about the paper is talk a little bit about your work in journalism, specifically teaching journalism. You've been a professor for 30 years.
No. I would say it's about 21 years. Yeah, I started my teaching career in 2003.
2003. Much of that time was at Howard University, but you're working with some students now. I'm curious about what can you tell us about this generation of journalism students coming up? What kind of work are you doing with them? What kind of stories are you helping them put together?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm teaching investigative journalism at Chapman University, which is in Orange County, California, which is a part of the LA area. And Chapman's broadcast journalism is in the film school. So it's a unique place where their print journalism is in the English department and their broadcast journalism is part of the film school in their documentary unit. So most of the places I've taught were actually accredited journalism schools like Howard University, Washington and Lee. I taught during my doctoral dissertation at University of Maryland. And of course, American University is where I started. And I want to say that my students are working on some very unique stories. One is there are veteran students who are on campus who are non-traditional students who aren't always necessarily getting the support that they need. And my students are working on a story on the kinds of resources and the kinds of support veteran students need on campus. Another story students are working on are the hate crimes that exist on campus, specifically between Jewish and Muslim students, given the war that's going on overseas. Another story students are working on is how Uber drivers are not necessarily treated fairly by the company, and specifically, you know, the independent contractors, and how Uber takes such a huge cut. Another story has to do with vaping, and vaping specifically because California has passed some laws. Students are getting access to vaping illegally. Vaping is, just like cigarette smoking. You have to be, I believe it's 21 to be able to buy the vaping products. And but students have found, young people have found a workaround to get access to this. And let's see here. Another story is, I'm just trying to think of all the stories my students are working on. And who am I forgetting here? Sorry about that. There's one more, and I think I'm drawing a blank here, and I don't know why.
If it comes to you later, you can let us know.
Okay, I will. I will do that. I will definitely do that, and we can move on if you want to.
We won't hold you to it.
Okay.
But I think the bigger issue, bigger question, really, and part of your going into, you were working as a TV news producer.
Right.
You were working. You went back to school, right, to get
Right.
your degree in
Right.
filmmaking.
So yeah, actually, I actually earned tenure at Howard University, and I think it was just kind of a wake-up call. I think I just asked myself, what do I really want to do with my life? The tenure process at any university is incredibly challenging, and there is a demand of publications. And fortunately, I was in the Department of Media, Journalism, and Film, so it wasn't just my journal articles and my book chapters that, okay, yes, Dr. Tachi, okay, master's and PhD from Howard.
Yeah.
I'm so honored to meet you, and thank you also for your earlier comment. I've always worked in a department that allows both journal articles, book chapters, as well as documentary film as part of my research agenda. And I had made 2 films prior to the current film that I'm working on. One is actually about my dad. I can give you the links in a minute. It's called Crossing Lines. I co-directed that with Lena Jaswal, who's currently the interim dean at American University School of Communications. And another film is called Life on the Ganges. And that is about the boatmen who travel up and down the Ganges River in Varanasi, India, and the celebration of Dev Diwali, which is 15 days after Diwali, and how people from all over the world, obviously mostly India, come to celebrate Diwali on the banks of the Ganges River. So yeah, I asked myself, what do I really want to do with my life? And I really wanted to become a better documentary filmmaker, and learn to make films through the eyes of an artist as opposed through the eyes of a journalist. And so I was accepted into the MFA program at UCLA, and I, first of all, didn't even think I'd get in. And so I ended up taking an extended leave of absence without pay from Howard, and I pursued my MFA. And but because of the pandemic, my matriculation was delayed. So I ended up staying in LA to finish the degree, and I really like it out here. So of course, now I'm teaching at Chapman.
Great. Well, with that, we're going to transition to talking about the newspaper. We're going to review the Sunday New York Times with Indira. And of course, as always, if you see an article that I pass over, please feel free to to point it out, and I'll go back and we'll cover it. But Sri gave a cursory glance earlier, so what we'll do, we'll just go through start with the A book, and then let us know if something particular strikes your fancy. The lead story: patients hit with big bills while insurers reap fees. Data company also profits by pushing low reimbursements, documents show. So, an important health insurance article. The display story: free to fight war, Russia's convicts return to kill again. This is about the war in Ukraine.
Mhm.
And that's just incredible in terms of using convicts as soldiers, but then they come back home. Below the fold, several stories. It's lunchtime. Let's see if I can get the fold right here. It's lunchtime. Your Baconator may cost more. This is about Wendy's. I don't know if you remember the announcement. They were going to try and do surge pricing effectively for
Oh,
their
yeah,
sandwiches. And this
yeah,
was a story about that.
I remember.
Um,
Yeah.
the sun has always nourished mankind in body and soul. That's the caption for this picture, inspiring a sense of wonderment. Gazing at the sky, awaiting a moment of awe. So that's, of course, about the eclipse that will take place tomorrow. Curious, a couple folks mentioned it earlier in the show, but if folks are watching, I know you're going to be outside the viewing area in LA. But
Right. I mean, I saw that the eclipse was in the path of Washington, D.C. in 2017.
yep,
So I was able to watch some of it then. But actually, I do want to make a couple comments about the
please,
stories this
please,
morning. First of all, one of the things about, uh, sorry, the headline below this picture, what does it say?
about the eclipse.
No, well, can you read it
Gazing,
for me, please?
gazing at the sky, awaiting a moment of awe.
Awaiting a moment of awe. Yeah, I mean, the eclipse is definitely something worth seeing, and I know that people are around the country. I mean, I'm just watching the news. I mean, every Airbnb is booked up, every hotel is booked up along the path.
Sure,
People are really just getting ready for this. But gazing at the sky also, or just getting outside and getting some vitamin D is so important for mental health as well. And, just getting back to my documentary, I mean, that is a lot of what my mom's doctors would talk about. And that is making sure mom gets out of bed and maintains her circadian rhythm. And then also I want to talk about the story above the fold about insurers and
sure.
when you're submitting your reimbursement request. I mean, this is a struggle with Medicare as well. And my mom has Medicare, but she also has secondary insurance. And this is, I think, because she is a retired social worker, she knows really well how to navigate the system. But to be honest with you, it's a real headache. And I really, I start to wonder, how do the elderly really manage dealing with these insurance companies? It's a real struggle.
Sure, sure. I do want to ask folks in the audience, if you are planning on watching the eclipse, let us know in the comments if you're in the path or if you're just outside the path in DC. We are expecting about 90% coverage. So we are going to take a moment to go outside. We picked up glasses yesterday. And we're actually, picking up our daughter from school. We were very surprised that one of the teachers in fifth grade is doing something for the whole class, but her teacher wasn't planning on doing anything, wasn't planning on taking them outside. Another school, the whole school is going outside, and we didn't want her to miss it. We talked about it yesterday. So let us know in the comments. I also want to bring in a comment from D. Copy, a shout out from one South Asian journalism professor to another. I teach at Hampton University in Virginia. Kudos to all you do for your mom. I've met you before at Saja. If you see the comment, Indira.
Yes,
From
yes.
D.
Thank you so much, Professor Coppi, right? Sorry, I don't
Yep,
have my glasses
yep,
on.
yep.
Yes,
COPPI.
thank you so much. I think HBCUs are so incredibly welcoming to South Asian professors, and that is something that I have uncovered there was definitely a plethora of South Asian professors at Howard University and clearly at Hampton as well. So thank you. It's nice to hear from you this morning.
Sure. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the paper. On the inside, the other article on the front page that I didn't get, Gaza protests vex Democrats from White House to City Hall. So that's the front page for us. Inside, we actually like looking at the A2 and A3. We had the editor, Megan DeTrolio, join us when they redesigned the inside pages.
Oh, nice.
This article, A Story Behind the Story, the Inside the Times column, is always my favorite. A designer whose handiwork will remain. After 46 years at the New York Times, Tom Bodkin is retiring as chief creative officer. This we'll definitely take a look at later. We've actually had the pleasure of meeting Tom over Zoom. Sri and I have joined the New York Times Design Hub twice for their internal meetings where they review what they've been doing at the paper, and they've asked us to share with them our insights, what our audience has thought of the paper. We have an interesting relationship with the Times in there. We're not officially part of the Times, of course. This is not a New York Times kind of sanctioned show in that way, but we have a very close working relationship with their editors. We get a lot of guests from them. Tom Jolly, the print editor, and Wayne Camadoy are always helping us with content and guests. So it's a very good relationship. But at the same time, when we need to, we criticize the Times as much as anybody when they deserve it. So I want to make sure that's clear for folks. Another interesting feature they have, the Dateline, where Times journalists are reporting from around the world. They do this every day to kind of highlight their international or their larger coverage outside New York. But they highlight Denver, Senegal, Gaza, and Indonesia as places where people are reporting from.
Wow.
In this edition.
That's impressive.
Their international story is about the Maldives. Of the Maldives, 188 inhabited islands, one is really crowded. Migration from past to uncertain future. And obviously, of course, the Maldives are an island chain to the southwest of India in the Indian Ocean. There's an article about a British lawmaker who admitted giving colleagues numbers to a grinder connection. It's a bit of a scandal. He gave up his other politicians' phone numbers in what they call a honeypot trap.
Wow.
Someone convinced him to give up those numbers. Rwanda's twin 30th anniversaries tell tale of progress and repression.
I remember this. Yeah, because Clinton was in office.
Yep.
When all of this was going on. Yes, I remember this vividly, actually. I never get a chance to really sit and look at the actual print copy of the paper. So I'm really loving this. Keep going, Neil.
Absolutely. This is what we love about looking at the print copy, and even I look at the app on my phone dozens of times a day just to see what's going on, what I might want to read. But that's the difference when you're looking at the print edition. You rely on serendipity. You don't know what you're going to find. You look at sections you may not have looked at otherwise. Whereas when you're looking on your phone or computer, people tend to go to the same sections kind of consistently, the stuff that you want to go find, not that you stumble upon. This article on the right is actually really interesting. Millions of Afghans fled the country for a better life in Pakistan. Authorities there have been forcing them back home, a place they had desperately escaped. And this is in one image, homecoming. So they kind of break down the image here.
Right.
Clothes, a rusted iron bed frame, a fan. When Pakistan ordered them out, they packed everything they might need. For the 7 families, this is the caption here, for the 7 families jammed into the struck, Afghanistan was home again, even if they had nowhere to go. They were going the wrong way. That wall marks the border with Pakistan, where they had been, where they wanted to be.
Right.
And then an IV bag of fluids, which a woman was hooked up to, sat on the truck. There was no food or water in sight. You can see a little IV bag there.
Wow.
I'm just pointing this out. I actually don't remember seeing a piece like this where they break down an image in this way. I thought that was interesting. And here is a half-page ad that we should draw attention to. We also like looking at the ads here. The Nita Mukesh Ambani Cultural Center in Mumbai, India, a half-page ad in the New York Times. Thank you for an extraordinary year of firsts. 366 days, 670 artists, 700 shows, 1 million audiences. I bring this up because Sri and I were actually in India for the opening of this cultural center last year. They were one of our clients. We worked with them for about 8 months on social media, and we were there. They had 2 red carpets. They had Hollywood and Bollywood A-listers. It was an incredible. We were there for about 10 days, helping them with the launch last year, right about this time.
Wow! And this is in New York City?
No, this is in Mumbai.
In
It's
Mumbai.
a combination of it's almost a combination of Lincoln Center and the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Radio City Music Hall in one space. They had an incredible fashion show. They had opening productions. They're trying to become a stop along the international Broadway touring geography, right? Like there's nowhere after you get out of Dubai, there was nowhere from Dubai to Beijing for shows to actually have a full scale production.
Oh, I get it now. Yeah, I get it. Wow, that's first of all, it's really impressive. You and Sri were involved with the launch.
Yeah,
but,
Andrew Lee as well.
Andrew, yes, I remember Andrew. Yes, this is incredibly impressive. I definitely need to let my relatives know about this. I mean, for all I know, they probably already do. It's always amazing to me how much India has changed. A place that you and I have probably both traveled to since our childhoods, and how much the country has evolved and become, places like this are creating international ports for artists to visit on their way to, as you said, Beijing, from Dubai to Beijing.
It was actually the first time I'd been into India in 20 years when we went last year. My previous trip was I mean, I always talk about how my early trips were family trips. We did the living room tour, 3 or 4 families a day. And then in the matter of a year and a half, when I was working with News India Times back in 99, 2000, around 2001, before I left Seattle, I went on a congressional delegation. I went on President Clinton's White House visit with the White House Press Corps. And then I went with a Swiss foundation showing off their work in addressing AIDS in India. So there are 3 kind of VIP tours. And then 20 years later, I came back and we worked with this project. So definitely was a privilege to do that. But that's the kind of thing, I would not have seen that if I wasn't looking at the print edition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the print edition. This is really the war overseas has it's just so many people affected by this. It's unbelievable. I belong to a film group, New Day Films, and New Day is an educational distributor. Really want to give a shout out to them. They distribute my other films, and there's been a lot of discussions as they have all, as many, well, at least a handful of filmmakers have filmed over in Gaza, have filmed over in Israel, and they've lost subjects of their previous films have passed on, as well as other filmmakers have lost relatives. So it's just becoming something that's universally affected everybody in so many ways.
Sure. I want to give Denise is giving us a shout out from Beverly Hills. So thank you for watching on LinkedIn. And Professor Copy mentioned that Kopikar is her full name, Kopikar, from Hampton University.
Okay, very good. Copy car. All right, it's definitely ringing a bell. I'll definitely have to friend you on Facebook.
Naomi said that we're making the right decision to bring Emily out to watch the eclipse, and that Apollo is going to try and watch in Philadelphia. I think Apollo, you will actually see quite a bit in the almost 90% range up
Yeah,
there. And
yeah,
and I'll say that I actually wasn't paying attention as much to the eclipse because I thought that if you weren't in the path, you weren't going to see anything. But
right.
in Washington and New York, we'll see about a 90% coverage. There's a great link. Univision has a great website that shows what it's going to look like in your zip code if you find it. So I'll try and share that again in Facebook later for folks. But you put in your zip code and it shows you exactly what you're going to see. The ticker across the bottom, if you can't see it, I want to make sure if you want to be added to our mailing list, send an email to me at neil@digimentors.group, neil@digimentors.group. Um, Apollo asked, where do you get glasses for the eclipse? Good luck with that, Apollo. I'm not sure. It's obviously short notice. My wife actually found a planetarium here in Arlington last night that was doing a presentation about eclipses and handing out glasses. And we ran there, watched the
Yeah.
presentation, came back with glasses. So we got lucky with that. And Jonathan saying he may take photographs of the shadows, but not the eclipse itself. Haven't really decided. And yes, Jonathan, you got to be careful. You can't, even through your camera, you can't take a picture without the right equipment. So don't aim your phone or your camera at the sun if you don't have the right filters for that.
Well, actually, I saw something on the news last night where if you hold your phone camera and put the glasses in front of it, you could still take a picture that way. You just got to put the the glasses you get in front of the camera of the phone or whatever camera. And well, the display they were doing on the news was the camera phone. But
I'd be careful with that. The advice we were given yesterday from NASA said not to do that.
oh,
So
not to do that.
I
Okay.
would Google that just to make sure
Yeah.
and look
Okay.
for a credible source, obviously. But it's just something to be careful with. At the very least, you don't want to be like Trump and look directly at the sun like you did several years ago from the White House balcony.
Yeah,
He
that's
literally did that.
well, I saw this story on NBC Nightly News. I'm really surprised.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway,
So let's see, what else do we have? This is still in the front section and still in the international, quite a few international stories
right,
today. But the national news, this is interesting. So a full page, you can see the pictures at the top, and I'll show the bottom.
sure,
Uh, in Maine, an ancient Jewish ritual gets a frozen twist. Um, and so this is also part of the way the Times is presenting stories. They're
right,
giving a little bit more detail about, why they're doing what they're doing, why we're here. I'll read this to you. We're exploring how America defines itself one place at a time. When a synagogue in Maine needed water for a ceremonial bath, it drew on a fitting natural source with some help. Um, so this is a little bit more from that story.
interesting, very interesting.
And then this is from that front page story. If you remember, gazing up, awaiting eclipse's moment of awe. This is
Yeah,
a two-page spread of people looking at previous eclipses, I believe. So some
sure,
interesting
sure,
photography.
yeah, for sure. Of course, yeah, are they wearing their glasses? I can't tell.
No,
Yeah,
and it may not be. This is the caption is witnessing science and spirituality intersect. Um, but I can't tell. It doesn't say experiencing the magic in a moment. It's not clear that they're watching the eclipse. I hope they're not.
right, right,
Um, but that's some of the challenges in terms of when you're looking at the paper quickly, you're looking at the cut lines, you're looking for a nut graph, you're trying to figure out the story. It's a read along, not a read through. That's for later in the day. That really a lot of people use this, and our friends on the West Coast watch the show before the paper hits their driveway. So this gives them a sense of what they want to look at later. Gives them a preview
sure,
to
sure.
some extent. Um, this is a story about a killing on the subway in New York. And this is the follow-up on the
The
issue of
insurance.
insurance
Yeah.
issue. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's 2 pages, and then they have several profiles that they've included, and then a detailed graph. Itemized payments and fees for thousands of claims were made public in a lawsuit against Cigna after the New York Times petitioned the court. The
Wow.
insurer and Multiplan opposed the release, calling the data highly confidential. But they're looking at the revenue codes, the billed amount, the allowed amount, etc.
I'm always amazed at how much I'm paying after my copay. It's
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's
Absolutely.
a lot.
Absolutely. Let's go through. There are a few other sessions I want to point out that for folks, at least this is in the national paper. So I was pleasantly surprised, but there's a special tabloid, The Best Restaurants in New York City. Sri mentioned that earlier when he was with us. But for foodies out there, here they are again, the 100 best restaurants in New York City ranked, but with an asterisk. Many of the restaurants from the 2023 list remain. Next to each restaurant's ranking, we've included either an up or down arrow. With the number of spots, the ranking shifted. The ranking of 2 restaurants, Tatiana and Le Bernardin, did not change. So that's interesting.
Very much. I obviously don't know if it's listed alphabetically or what. I'm curious to know if this Indian restaurant called Vatan is still is on the top 100. I mean, it's a vegetarian Gujarati Indian restaurant. I want to say the Lower East Side. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's the Lower West Side, but they have the best.
Sema is listed at number 7.
Yes, I know. Sri mentioned I have not been there. Yes,
Yeah.
I lived it. You know, when I was a producer with CNBC, I lived there for 3 years in New York City, and God, I really had a great opportunity experiencing all the great restaurants there.
It's interesting the way that they do the listings. You have the ranking with the up or down, the name of the restaurant, the location, and then the cuisine. So it is easy to scan through, but I'm not seeing another Indian restaurant, and we're up in around 49.
Oh yeah, Sri said there are other Indian restaurants listed.
Yeah, there might be. He would have had a chance to look. This would have come in the Saturday bundle. So he may have taken a quick peek. There's a Dhamaka in the Lower East Side is at 54.
Okay.
And let's see if I can see anything else real quickly for folks. Of course, all sorts of cuisine: Spanish, American, Italian, Israeli. They even have a deli, Barney Greengrass, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Wow.
French. They have an Egyptian seafood place in Queens.
Wow.
And here there's the Temple Canteen. Wow. I know that they have good food, but this is probably the Hindu temple in Queens.
Oh yeah,
made the list.
That's incredible. Can I just say we started visiting that temple in the 70s, you know, with many frequent trips to the New York area. Yes, that canteen have the best food. I will tell you that for sure.
And they went up 16 spots from last year.
Wow, impressive.
That's impressive. I've heard a lot about that, and we actually did some work with them, the Hindu Temple of New York, during the pandemic, helping them. They were doing an installation of several idols, and we helped live stream that for them. This was 3 years ago, I think now. But let's see if there's any. There's a restaurant, Hyderabadi Zaika, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I've got to check that place out. Yeah.
Down Manhattan, 95. So they made the list. And a Sri Lankan restaurant made it at 98 in Staten Island. And that's it. That's the 100 best restaurants in New York City. So encourage folks to check it out. I don't know what their online version is. We'll just take a quick look at the rest of the paper. The business section, changing Britain's quiz culture. Brandon Blackwell an American, upended the long-running TV show University Challenge. And then minor league baseball faces a real estate problem. That's on the front page of Business. Sunday Opinion, total solar eclipse is not something that you see, it's something that you experience. Gmail is 20 years old. I've told it goodbye and I'm reclaiming my life. You can too. Ezra Klein. And then here is RFK. You can't tell from the top half of the picture. You can't really tell who it is. But if you look at the full picture, I'll try and get this for you. I mean, it has a really, worn look on his face there. The wild card. RFK Jr. is building a strange political movement out of strange bedfellows. Who will it benefit? Very disappointed in him. And I grew up in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York, and his work on the environment was legendary, and he was very well regarded until he started with the anti-COVID
exactly
denialism and all that.
I remember that.
Joan Collins, what keeps him going?
That's impressive. That's really impressive. God, remember Dynasty?
Yep.
I remember that for sure.
So 4 creative spirits share the secrets of a lifelong career. Joan Collins, Martha Stewart, Giorgio Armani, and Betye Saar, who I don't know.
But you know what? I think you're kind of missing the lead there, and that's in the top. I think they're covering women's basketball.
Let's go up to women's basketball.
To be honest with you, I'm sorry. What did you want to say, Neil?
I was going to say this story is actually not about the NCAA in terms of the women's basketball, which is an incredible story. I think Caitlin Clark from Iowa facing off against South Carolina, Dawn Staley's team. But this is actually about the coach, I believe, at LSU, Kim
LSU.
Shouts with her fashion. So there's been a lot about that one basketball coach and her fashion choices.
Well, and I think I saw a story in the Washington Post on her. Sorry to give a shout out to the Times' competitor, but well, that is definitely what the country is talking about. The tickets for women's basketball are up to like $2,000 a ticket, where the men's basketball is only, not up to $1,000 a ticket. I mean, the entire country is talking about women's basketball, I feel like right now.
Absolutely.
There's just been so much. And incredible t-shirts that have come out. Everybody watches women's sports. I've seen these incredible t-shirts that have come out. So
without question. Again, with the ads, I do have to pull in this Ralph Lauren ad. And I'm not sure if you'd recognize, but Aaron Judge of the Yankees looking very dapper. I'm a big Yankee fan, so I have to go there. There's Arts and Leisure, the book review, 50 Years of Stephen King, Margaret Atwood, Diablo Cody, George R.R. Martin, and others writing about Stephen King. And then this New York Times Magazine cover story about the Inquirer. This is someone who worked at the Inquirer and talked about their catch and kill campaign during the election, when they would get a story and then bury it to keep it out of the news. So there's some interesting articles there. I do want to point out one other article that is in the paper, but it's not in my edition because it's in the real estate section. We don't get the real estate section here in Washington, D.C., but a friend of ours, a friend of the show, Arlene Schulman, was recently featured in the New York Times. It's pretty incredible to see her story there. So folks who know Arlene, you may have seen this on Facebook, on elsewhere. The benefits of living in the same place for a long time. 30 years ago, a woman got a $250 a month rent-stabilized apartment in Inwood. In Manhattan, the northern upper.
I know exactly where Inwood is. I have a family friend who lives up there. I've taken the train up to Inwood.
Wow.
Wow.
She says the neighbor has defined not only her life, but her life's work. She's a great photographer. She's done a lot of great series. But this article talks about her apartment. And what I was going to mention, that in watching the commentary online,
Right.
and Apollo mentions that Betye Sar is an acclaimed Black artist from that list of
Yeah.
Joan Collins, Martha Stewart, and Giorgio
Right.
Armani. Thank you, Apollo, for that.
Right.
But Arlene the New York Times has been pushing this article several times on social media. I've seen her comments to folks and replies to people. She's a writer, filmmaker, and photographer.
Wow.
One of the things that to point out, one of the people left a comment saying, if I remember correctly, all they said was white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And Arlene, of course, is a white woman. Her reply was, "Thank you very much. The neighborhood I live in and the people who have rent stabilized apartments here are like 70% people of color,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 10% Caucasian, and a mix of others. Like it's not a question of white folks getting some kind of privilege." And as I thought it was something worth pointing out. Jonathan says he's been in his place since 1978. There are definite benefits to that. And I want to note that on Instagram, on Sri's Instagram, Emin Zet also pointed out who Betye Sar is. So thank you for keeping me honest on all fronts, on all channels.
Yeah, but Neil, just to point out, she got this apartment 30 years ago, right?
Correct.
So maybe the
Correct.
person who commented is referring to the fact that maybe there was preferential treatment for white renters when she got the apartment 30 years ago. I mean, it may be much more gentrified now or much more multicultural now, but was it 30 years ago? I don't know. I'm just
don't know.
pointing out, you know, what the other person might have meant.
Sure. And this is, I put less faith in that in terms of a random comment on Facebook, on the New York Times Facebook post, because you'll get all sorts of people saying anything. But I think this is an interesting article, definitely worth checking out if folks have time. We have a few other comments that have come in, so just want to make sure we capture them before we let you go. We did hit the 10 o'clock hour East Coast time, 7 o'clock your time in there. I don't know if you're going to be able to go back to sleep after this, but hopefully you'll get some rest during the day. Let's see. My mom said that in India, during the eclipse, people do not look at the sun. Also, they throw away water and food from the house because there is a belief that food and water got poisoned due to the eclipse. This is the way I witnessed it when I was growing up. Mom, I'd be curious when. I actually haven't heard this story from my mom yet, so this is always interesting.
Yeah.
Mom, when was it that you saw the eclipse? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, this is brand new information to me too. I mean, I didn't realize. I wonder if my mom saw it too, or
yeah,
you know,
maybe ask her about it if you get a chance. And Jonathan makes a point about the New York the restaurant list, that the index is not as good as it should be. The index just does borrow, but should have also by cuisine and price. They do have it in the listings, but not in the index. So
yeah.
good thought, Jonathan.
You know what? Wasn't it Jonathan who addressed the earthquake earlier? We haven't talked about that.
We haven't. We didn't talk about the earthquake. Yes.
The show is wrapping up, right?
If you have a few extra minutes in there, tell us what are your thoughts as a Californian or a more recent Californian about this. I think you call it a so-called earthquake, right?
Well, you know, I haven't lived here long enough to experience any real earthquake in California. I've definitely felt some tremors since I've been out here, and just a couple, but and it was my first time really feeling something like that. I hadn't felt it I wasn't in DC in 2011. I was overseas on a fellowship in India, actually. So in 2011, when DC had its earthquake, I wasn't there for that. But my aunt was telling me she thought it was a couple of seconds. Now, she's in Paramus, New Jersey, and she thought it was a couple of seconds. But then, you know, when I got on social media, people were saying it lasted, nearly a minute and so forth. I don't know what to say other than the fact that I think other parts of the country may have felt it worse. They may have felt earthquakes worse, but again, I wasn't there, so I don't know. It's not as common, my understanding, on the East Coast as it is on the West Coast.
Sure.
But it's just really when I was watching the news, it's, I guess, the plates are relieving stress, and that's my understanding what's happening.
It was interesting. I know that being here in DC, I saw our WhatsApp group just blow up with people
Yes,
talking about
right,
feeling the earthquake and what tremors were. I'm going to give a call out. Stefan Kaplan, who was watching earlier, he talked about how he felt the earthquake and ran out because he wasn't sure what was going on. Whether
right,
something was falling, a tree was falling outside. My mom says that it felt as if a train was moving with some kind of a problem. And I still remember people posted about an earthquake that hit Westchester County in 1984 or 1985. I was
right,
much younger then, but I remember my mom rushing us out of the house, and we sat in the car and turned on the radio. This is before cell phones,
right,
because she had experienced earthquakes back in Burma,
right.
Myanmar now. So she's very attuned to this. And Jonathan says it happens roughly every decade, if memory serves, with the epicenter usually in New Jersey. There's a fault line there. Um, and
Okay,
Apollo, who's in Philadelphia, as an Angelino. So I didn't know that Apollo was originally from Los Angeles. The earthquake was small. Nothing moved except my plant's leaves. I carried on working.
okay.
And
Well, Apollo would know. You
right,
definitely, as a
right.
former Angelino, he would know for sure. He'd be the best to draw the comparison for sure.
Dan Barry, who's a wonderful writer for the New York Times, who's been a guest on our show, he posted on Facebook that his bobbleheads started moving with the earthquake. And that's how he knew something was going on. I know there were several aftershocks. Naomi says they felt aftershocks in the early evening on the Upper West Side. I believe
Yeah,
around 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock were
I heard about the aftershocks for sure. I
two
heard about
things.
the aftershocks.
But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Of course, if you joined us late, you can always watch the show from the beginning on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, uh, and our website. Instagram, it'll take a little bit of time for me to put up the video, but you can find it there as well eventually. Um, we appreciate all of the comments, all of the engagement. Want to give one last shout out to Indira for the for the documentary she's working on with her mom about the
Mhm.
relationship with her mom and her mom struggles with depression. So important that you are.
Oh, hello, Neil. You froze. Um, Well, thank you again, Neil, for having me on the show. It's been an honor to be here, and I'm so unbelievably grateful that I've been able to talk about a subject that has been such a taboo subject in our community for so long. Uh, and I see here on the ticker that you're encouraging people to watch it on various platforms. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You froze for a minute
Yeah,
there.
sorry about that. I know, I
Yeah.
realize. But
So,
thank you.
yeah, no, thank you, Neil. I was just saying thank you. I don't know if you could hear me while you froze, but I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to be able to plug the film. And again, this is not a fundraising campaign. If you want to give, great. I'm sure we'll send some after links about, or afterwards send the link about where you can donate if you want to, because we are in post-production and raising money for the film is one of the things I'm trying to do so we can finish editing this film. But more importantly, I just want to get the message out that depression does exist in the South Asian community.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining our show on Thursday to go into more detail
I'm
about
very,
this.
I'm very excited about that opportunity to speak with you and Dawn. That's going to be a great opportunity to talk about the film and talk about our community, for sure.
Thank you very much. We hope everyone has a great weekend, and we look forward to catching up with you next week. Apollo gets the closing comment. A great show, great way to start the week. Happy for you for getting your documentary filmed. Can't wait to see it. We can't, all of us, we can't, we all can't wait. Thank you,
Thank you.
Indira.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.